So today's video is all about the new Natasha Denona I Need a Nude palette. I thought I would try it out with you on camera for the first time. I did some swatches right before filming this video, and I'll share some comparisons at the end of the video as well. But I'm excited to play with it. It just came in the mail last night, so I thought I would create a look for today. And when I saw this palette, I knew that I wanted it. I thought it would be my most used Natasha Denona palette. The last one I purchased was the Yucca palette, which is so gorgeous, really unique. And I think that's the most unique one to my collection, but it's not something I reach for every single day. So when I saw this one, I was really excited to grab it because I just knew I would get a ton of use out of it. So they're marketing this one as like your everyday essential rosy cool toned eyeshadow palette. What's interesting is as I was swatching the shadows, some of them do pull very warm toned on my skin tone. I was even messing with my camera settings because I was like, is it off? Is the white balance a little bit off? But some of the shades in here, even though they look kind of cool toned or maybe even neutral in the palette, do look warm when I swatch them. That's not necessarily a major con for me because I do like warm tones too. But if you're someone who wants like a fully cool toned palette, that could potentially be a con for you. So I definitely want you to take a look at the swatches. I will definitely focus on the cooler tone shadows for today's look because I do want to get like a fully cool look out of this. I'm not sure if I'll do something a little bit softer or more dramatic, but I'll come back in a few days and do another look along with some other new makeup I want to test out. I just checked a few minutes ago and this palette is currently sold out on Sephora's website, but it is in stock on Ulta's website. This video is either going to go up like a few hours later, potentially the next day. So if it is available, I'll link it in the description box below, but I'm sure you can get it on the Natasha Denona website as well. I purchased mine from Sephora. It actually shipped really quickly. I didn't pay for expedited shipping or anything like that, and it came securely packaged, which is really great. So just looking at this palette, I think it is a gorgeous option, especially if you like really intense metallics, glittery shadows. There are so many pretty finishes in here. Just swatching this one, I don't think there are going to be any issues with the quality of the shadows. I just think it's whether or not the shades and the tones are going to work for you. But the standout shades in here are definitely that new formula she created. They have like a very wet looking shine to them, which is my type of shimmer. Okay, so let's do a look, and then like I said at the end, I'll do some comparisons to other palettes in my collection that are somewhat similar. I'm going to start with the shade Mesh and just like a very large fluffy brush and just blend this into the crease and then up as a transition color. I know this is so repetitive if you watch my videos, but I do deal with a little bit of dryness on this right eye, so sometimes shadows will look a little bit patchy, but it's very rarely due to the actual quality of a shadow. You can usually tell when I go in and do the left eye. Everything blends on the left eye a little bit better, but I feel like I have to do my right eye first. I don't know why, so that's the one that typically gets the most camera time because I usually start with this one. I do have an eyeshadow primer down and then I just set everything into place with a powder shadow. Sometimes with Natasha Denona shadows, I won't set my eyeshadow primer into place and I'll start with a little bit of a creamier base. It kind of depends on the look that I'm going for, but most of the time when I'm testing something out, I do start with more of a matte base first. This is a pretty shade, so this definitely has a little bit of rosiness to it. There are some shadows in here that pull almost very pink or peach on my skin, at least as I was swatching them. But when I was thinking of like a rosy, cool toned palette, this is the type of shadow I was mostly looking forward to having in the palette. And then I'm just going to apply the same shadow on the other eye. By the way, this is a Sigma E61 brush. I'll list all of the brushes that I'm using in the description box. I'm just taking a little bit of the shade Fair and just blending out the edges just a little bit. This one did pull a little bit warm toned as I was swatching it. It's probably not a shade I would end up really packing on my eye, more so using as like a lighter brow bone shade just to kind of diffuse the edges. That shade went on really nicely. Obviously I didn't layer too much of it. I'm going to go in with the shade Stone and just blend this into the crease. There were some really gorgeous looks within the promo photos for this palette on Instagram. Sometimes Natasha Denona ends up launching like tutorials either on Instagram or YouTube. They might actually be up on YouTube. And sometimes I'll watch those just for inspiration. I'm not anywhere near as talented as Natasha Denona. I think she's usually the one that creates the looks within the tutorials, at least on Instagram. But they are kind of nice to use as inspiration. They help me be a little bit more creative. So I did not check those out ahead of time. Maybe I'll follow one of those for my next look when I use this palette in an upcoming video. Because in today's video, I was thinking about testing some other products alongside of this, but I thought I would just do the palette today. Anyway, a lot of the looks were very dark. There is one deeper shade in here in the shade Silhouette. I probably will use that today just to see how dark we can get this look to be. but I feel like a lot of them were more dramatic than I would typically go with this palette. The reason why this palette appealed to me is because I thought it would just be nice for like easy, lighter looks, or even like more of a smoky look, but not anything too intense. Okay, I'm going to take that Silhouette shade. I'm not necessarily going to pack it on the outer corner, but I am going to focus it right here and then just softly blend out the edges. I'm not necessarily worried about a super blended look right here with this shade because I'm going to end up going over it with a shimmer or probably one of those like wet looking metallics. But I do want to darken up the outer corner and see how it looks. I definitely like the tone of this dark brown. Like it definitely leans cool on the eyes. I was kind of nervous when I was doing like the close-ups and the swatches that this was going to be a little bit warmer, but it really does have a very pretty cool undertone. I'm just going to layer up a little bit more. Honestly, I'm not getting any fallout, which is nice, especially with a deeper shadow like this. And again, I'm not going to blend it too much. I also don't want to go in with like a super dense brush and really pack it on. I guess I'm going for a little bit more of a smoky look today. I wasn't sure if I was going to do something lighter or softer, but I do want to use as many shadows as possible. I'm just going to go back in with that initial shade Mesh and just blend out the edges just a little bit, just to make sure there aren't harsh lines up into the crease before I go in with lid shades. For the lid, I think I'm going to take this shade Delilah. I do think this is one of her new wet shine or wet looking shimmers. Okay, let's see how this goes. The reason why I think this formula is going to be ideal is because it gives you like that intense sparkle, hopefully without any of the fallout that you can sometimes get from other shimmer shadows. It is very pretty. It's going on nicely. It's a little bit darker, I think, than I thought it was going to be because in the pan, it looks very, very multidimensional. How does it look on the eye? It's hard to tell because I'm looking at the monitor. Actually, I think I am getting just a little bit of fallout with this shade. Okay, it looks pretty. I think I'll go into the lighter shade just to brighten things up, but let me just apply this to the other eye too. To brighten things up a little bit, I think I'm going to go in with that shade Mila. This has like a little bit of pink to it. Ooh, yeah, it has like an icy, well, it looks pink in the pan, but on the eyes, it definitely has like an icy silvery effect. This is my type of lid shade. Like even if the eye look is a lot more dramatic, I tend to prefer something a little brighter like this versus this. That's pretty, but I don't know. I like the way this just kind of brightened things up and just gave it a little bit of like an icier spotlight. I am definitely getting some fallout. Ooh, a lot of fallout. Like it is on my face. It's in my hair. It's probably on my shirt. So my original theory that these wouldn't have a ton of fallout is definitely off. Okay, I'll be right back. I'm going to apply a little bit of black eyeliner and mascara, clean up the fallout, and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. That took me a little while because I had glitter everywhere. There was a lot more fallout than I realized. It was in my hair, like the roots. I think I still have some there. It was on my forehead, all over my face, my shirt, everywhere. So keep that in mind. Maybe do your eyes first or use a wet brush if you want to minimize that. So I did apply a little bit of liquid liner and just a small wing. This is the Stila Stay All Day liquid liner. And then I did tight line with the Too Faced Killer Liner in black. I actually decided to add some lashes. These are the Ardell Naked Lashes in 428. They're pretty. They're like fluttery, but they're not overly dramatic. So they add something to the look without being over the top. Okay, so let's move on to the lower lash line. I probably won't do anything too dark. I really wish I could get on board with like the blank lower lash line because I think it's pretty. I just feel like it looks a little bit off on me. So I'm going to mix the shades Mesh and Stone. They're not too dark. They'll just kind of add like a little definition to that lower lash line. I know, like I always get comments that are like, just try it, just skip the lower lash line, but I don't know. It always looks a little bit off on me. And I think because I have fine lines under my eyes, they're almost like a little more obvious when I'm not wearing eyeshadow. So I just prefer to go in with a little something. But you know what? Maybe I'll keep it a little softer today rather than going really dramatic. I feel like once I go in with mascara, should I skip mascara? I don't know. I don't know if I can get on board. I feel like it just looks a little bit off on me, but sometimes mascara takes it over the edge and not in a great way because if I just add a little bit of shadow, I feel like it ties things together, but sometimes mascara ends up looking a little too dramatic. I feel like this look almost has a little bit of a purpley hue to it, almost a little bit more than rosy, which is interesting because I specifically stayed away from like the very pinky shades. But I do think the taupes have like a purple undertone. which is pretty. For the waterline, I am going to use this ColourPop Cream Gel Liner in the shade Kicker. It's actually a really pretty metallic silver, and I think it adds like a fun pop without being too colorful. So I kind of like to pair this with some of my cooler toned looks. So for mascara, I'm just going to take the Flower Beauty Dream Warrior mascara and add just a little bit of this on my lower lashes. Nothing too over the top, just like a tiny small amount. Usually I use the Milani Lash Extensions mascara on my bottom lashes. I can't find that. For the inner corner, I'm just taking a little bit of the shade Sheen to, I kind of want to go in with the shade Mira. This is the one that had a lot of fallout though. That's okay. Yeah, Mira, I feel like is the perfect inner corner shade if you want like that bright pop. I think Mira is one of my favorite shades in the palette. It just looks pretty on the lid and as an inner corner. You can definitely see a little more of the pink as the inner corner shade rather than all over the lid, but I think that's it. Okay, so let me share my thoughts on this palette after using it for the first time. Keep in mind, this is not like a complete review. I wanna make sure I test out all of the shades multiple times, but I kind of just wanted to test it out on camera with you and see what it's like, what kind of look I could create. So I'll do another look in just a few days where I test out additional products. I'll probably incorporate some of the shades that pull more warm toned on my eyes, some of the pinks, and then just like a really pretty easy everyday look. So that should be up within a few days. But initially, I really like the palette. I think it performs very, very well. Other than the fallout, there really wasn't any issue for me personally. The matte shadows are really creamy, very easy to blend out. I think when it comes to Natasha Denona, like when I purchase a more colorful palette, sometimes the mattes take a little extra effort or they might appear slightly patchy. Typically, they tend to be more colorful shadows that I've heard are more difficult to formulate. Obviously, I'm not a cosmetic chemist. I don't formulate shadows myself, but a lot of people say that about like those muddy greens or like those really intense berries. So with this palette, I feel like you don't have to worry about that because these are all neutral shadows. So the quality definitely seems to be there other than the fallout, but I guess that's kind of to be expected with a really glittery shadow. I don't think this is the most groundbreaking color story, obviously, but I think for a lot of people who don't tend to wear very colorful eyeshadow, this could definitely appeal to you, whether you want to create something a little more dramatic like I have on today or something more simple. When I film a video testing out a Natasha Denona palette, I typically just use that palette, but for day to day, like I'll pull in multiple Natasha Denona palettes. I've been wearing the Love palette alongside of the retro palette. I feel like I'm mixing all their names up in my head. I've been wearing that a lot lately because I've been really into pink and purple looks. So I think this one would actually pair so well with like Biba or Retro Glam or Retro or Glam. All of our palettes I feel like have really similar names these days. So as for comparisons, this is the Natasha Denona Glam palette. I've had this one for a while. It's a really beautiful palette. I don't wear this one quite as much as some of her other palettes because as much as I do love cool tones, I don't know, like there's something about this that doesn't always look the most flattering on my skin. That's why I think I Need a Nude might be more ideal for me because it has those rosy tones, or that's just what I typically prefer. But if you're not a fan of like those rosy, cooler tone shadows, this might be more ideal for you. There are two shades in here that kind of have like a pink tint to them, but other than that, like this is a true cool and neutral palette. It's not fully cool toned, but the cool tones in here are very cool. Like you get silvers and grayed out taupes, so it is nice to have. And then it has a couple of like, this almost pulls warm on my skin. I like that this one does have like that pinky purpley hue to it, so if you're like me and that's the shades that you typically reach for, this will be more appealing for that reason. But I think they could work well together. I'll include some side-by-side swatches so you can see what the colors really look like and then maybe decide if there is a palette that would work better for you. I will say the metallics in here are pretty similar across the board. It doesn't have any of those like different finishes. Like it feels like she's constantly coming up with a new way to include like glitter or metallic in her palettes. This just feels like a staple solid metallic formula, and I don't experience a lot of fallout with this, so that could be more appealing to you too. But I do think they're different enough that you might want one or the other, or you might like to use them together. I do have two ColourPop palettes that I think give like a very similar vibe to this one. So one of you actually suggested this one when I talked about it in my purchase or pass video, the ColourPop Going Coconuts palette. This has been one of my favorites for years, and I wouldn't say there are a ton of like shade for shade dupes, maybe like 2 or 3 of the shades, but I think overall the feel of this palette is pretty close to some of the shadows in here. Obviously, this only comes with 9 shadows, so it's missing a couple of shades, but I think if you do want like a neutral look and even a couple of cooler tone shadows, this doesn't really lean super warm or super cool. It kind of falls right in the middle, which is what I think a lot of people tend to go for rather than an intensely warm look or an intensely cool look. The only thing it's missing is kind of like that almost like rosy or purpley vibe, which is why I thought this one could be a good option. I honestly didn't think of this one at first until I was going through my palettes, just seeing what kind of matched up. This is the ColourPop That's Taupe palette. Mine looks very, very rough. I'll do a close-up shot for you, but I've had this for a really long time, and it is one of my favorites, even still. This is definitely a cooler toned palette. It's so gorgeous, still one of my favorites. It's been used and loved for such a long time, and the shadows in here are so good. I wouldn't say the formulas are the same by any means, but it does give a very similar look to the eyes, and the matte shadows are really easy to work with. Like, they blend out in seconds, and this does have like this one textured metallic, which is interesting. It almost gives like a foiled effect to the eyes. So if you have That's Taupe and you have Going Coconuts, I don't know. I really feel like you could come close to the I Need a Nude palette, or at least just be able to create some similar looks using it. Again, the formulas are different. I love Natasha Denona's formulas. I feel like her shimmers are definitely more intense than ColourPop. And I really do enjoy this, and I think it's going to be one of my most used palettes, but it's just not quite as cool toned as I thought it was going to be. Obviously, I have a very cool look on today, but when I do my second look, I'll pull in like these shades, this one, maybe this one, and show you another type of look you can create. In the end, I think it's a little bit more of a versatile palette than I thought it was going to be because you can get those warm looks and those cool looks. So that could definitely be a pro for you or a major con if you're just looking for a true cool toned palette. So let me know what you guys think about this palette in the comments section below. Let me know if you plan on trying it out. In the end, I definitely think it's going to be one of her best sellers. Neutral palettes just sell well. And looking at it compared to her other neutral palettes I own like Glam and Biba, this one is different enough, and these are the types of shades I like even more than those. So I do think I'll be able to get a lot of use out of it. But I'll keep you updated in a few weeks and let you know what I think about the formula, the shades, after I've had the chance to wear them multiple times. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Thanks for being here. I'll definitely upload another video using this palette in just a few days, and I'll come back in a few weeks and share a full update once I've had the chance to really thoroughly test it out, all of the shades multiple times, and let you know what I think then. But thanks again for being here. I'll see you very soon with a new video. Bye.